The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday, July 10th. There's always a bunch of stuff going on, and I open up the screen here, and God, you guys are asking questions even before I get on air. This is great. Thank you. Fantastic. Keep us going here for a while. All right, keep the questions coming. It's a way for you to shape the show because I get to talk about what interests you. All right, let's jump into it. We talk a lot about Milei, and we've talked a lot about kind of what Milei has done, his success. Inflation's way down, poverty's way down, GDP is way up. By every measure, things seem to be going extraordinarily well in Argentina. Indeed, it is causing a lot of people a lot of surprise. People didn't weren't expecting this amazing success. And the reality is that Milei has managed to get a lot more done than people expected him to do. I'll just say, before we get into the heart of what I want to talk about, a lot of this is gonna depend on how the future of all this is going to depend on how well his political party does in the election coming up in October. So we've got a few kind of months of suspense, maybe the most suspenseful election out there this year or in the next few years. What happens between now and October? The opposition parties that are used to handing out goodies to the electorate in order to get their votes are at it again. They are trying on a large scale to try to pass laws, since they dominate the parliament. They're trying to pass laws that will basically raise pensions and increase the welfare state and give out goodies, and would basically destroy the balanced budget that Milei, or the surplus budget that Milei has right now, and could create real problems to his reforms. And why are they doing this? They're suddenly doing this now. Why are they doing this now? Well, they want Milei to veto it. Milei will veto it, and then they'll be able to go to the voting public and say, see, we wanted to give you free stuff. He is the nasty guy who doesn't want you to have free stuff. Don't vote for him, vote for us. So it's all a political ploy more than it is anything in economics. Milei will veto it, and then it could be theoretically overruled. They could override his veto. They have that kind of majority in the parliament. Milei will have to hustle to try to prevent that from happening. Even if it happens, he'll probably tie them up in court until the election. So October is going to be really, really key and really, really important for the future of Milei's what do you call it? Programs, or Milei's program. I'm distracted by reading a super chat question. Anyway, we won't know kind of how this is all going to go until we get to that October elections. At the very least, Milei is going to need to do well enough to be able to guarantee that his vetoes cannot be overridden, and I think he'll probably do that well. But what he'd really like is to get a majority so he can pass whatever he wants in Congress and actually do all the deep, fundamental reforms that he would like to do that would really put Argentina on the path of being a kind of free market, a real free market, maybe a model for the rest of the world. So this isn't re-election. This is elections for parliament in October, and only once he gets that, starts doing the real deep reforms, then he can start worrying about getting reelected 2 years later. But first, he needs to get by these congressional elections. All right, but what I really want to talk about Milei today is I read this really interesting article by Noah Smith. Now, Noah Smith is a left of center kind of economic blogger. He's been writing about economics for well over 10 years now. He's got a huge following. He's very successful. He's a good writer. His views on some economic issues are pretty good. On other economic issues, they're really bad. But generally, he's of the pro-abundance, pro-economic growth, pro-build side of, if you will, the Democratic Party or the left. So he is more of a, and he generally has a respect for markets. Anyway, he had an article today about Milei. And here's the headline, kind of the title of the article: "Free market economics is working surprisingly well." And of course, I'll get to how he explains this, why it is happening. But he says, "Look, people have been blaming neoliberalism." Neoliberalism is a stand-in for capitalism, if you will, for free market economics. People have been saying it has failed, that what we need is an overhaul, that what we need is to move more towards socialism, that what we need is on the left, what we need is much more industrial planning, much more government control, much more planning generally by government. And then on the right, of course, he points out, the new Republican Party is all about tariffs and immigration restrictions and also industrial planning, at least some industrial planning. We'll get to some of that later on. And so he says, there's this phenomenon in the world out there right now that politically, left and right have basically come to the same conclusion generally, even though the particulars are different. The general conclusion that free markets don't work. That indeed, what needs to work is a mixed economy with a significant tilt towards more state intervention. But we need markets in some things. All of them would acknowledge, even Elizabeth Warren. But we need a significant tilt, regulatory-wise, industrial policy-wise, tax-wise, regulations-wise, all of these wise, in order to mitigate the bad that comes with free markets, in order to actually spur growth. That is, economic growth actually comes from industrial planning. Bad things happen if you don't have good industrial planning, if the government doesn't get involved, even to issues like growth and abundance. Right? And he says, look, so you right here. For years, I criticized free market ideology, fretted about the decline of the Rust Belt, expressed suspicion about free trade, and called for industrial policy to revive manufacturing. I wrote many times that the Biden administration's industrial policies represented a needed break from the dogma of the past, and that Trump had enabled that needed shift by destroying the political consensus for free trade. I'm constantly warning that without attention to strategic industries, America and its allies will lose a war to China. And he goes on and on and on about the fact that he is not a friend of free market economics. But he says, when I say that criticism of the free marketeers has been overdone, I'm partially talking to myself. Now, let me just say right off the bat, this is great, right? This is great because so Milei is starting to cause some of these statists to rethink their statism, at least a little bit, as we'll see. Not completely, but a little bit, and the more successful he will be. And the more successful he is over the long run, the more he's going to have to cause the more honest ones. And Noah Smith strikes me as one of the more honest ones, not completely, but more honest than the rest of this. He writes, a couple of months ago, horrified by Trump's tariff policies, I wrote an apology to libertarians, admitted I'd failed to see the political usefulness of their project in terms of maintaining economic sanity on the right. So, but he says, but it's not just a political benefit. So he wrote it about libertarians. They push politically the right to be more saner, if you will, from an economic perspective. But that was just politics. And he says, but it's not just the political benefits of free markets that are being oversold. I think the purely economic advantages are also too often ignored. And he says, look, Exhibit A is Javier Milei's track record in Argentina. A year and a half ago, when Milei was elected president of Argentina, a bunch of left-wing economists warned darkly that his radical free market progress would lead to economic devastation. Let me quote from these left-wing economists, right, who were predicting devastation. The election of the radical right-wing economist Javier Milei as president of Argentina would probably inflict further economic devastation and social chaos on the South American country. This is 100 leading economists wrote, right, including my favorite, Thomas Piketty, but many others, pretty well-known economists on the left. Anyway, the reality is that Milei actually cut government spending, which most economists call fiscal austerity. I hate that term. I mean, it's not austerity. It's just shrinking government or stopping government from doing things that it shouldn't be doing, and eliminating all the functions that it shouldn't be engaged in to begin with, both for political reasons and economic reasons. But Milei actually cut government spending. Really, not the Republican kind of government spending, cutting government spending where you cut the growth, but you actually increase the dollar amount of spending. He decreased the dollar amount of spending. He decreased the amount of actual spending. As Noah Smith writes, Argentina's long-standing economic model, created by dictator Juan Perón in the 1950s, I think it even goes before that, involved a large and complex array of public works projects and subsidies for various consumer goods like energy and transportation. Milei slashed many of these, as well as cutting pensions, civil servant employment, and transfers to provinces. Overall, listen to this, overall he cut public spending by about 31%. 31%. Now, think about these Republicans whining about the fact that they cut a little bit of spending, but really increased relative to what was projected, or Democrats claiming a fiscal catastrophe because they cut a little bit of Medicaid, even though they're spending a huge amount on everything else. Milei actually cut spending by 31%. As a consequence, he completely eliminated Argentina's budget deficit, which had been chronic forever, like the U.S. It's gone. There is no budget deficit. And this, this had two effects. One is it removed state intervention in the economy. So when you stop spending money on economic stuff, you're intervening less in the economy. And second is it took away inflationary pressures, that is, deficits, convince the markets that you will inflate those deficits away, whether you're inflating them away right now or not, and therefore they anticipate that inflation and they inflate, which is what almost always happens. Countries that experience hyperinflation have large deficits, and in order to get that hyperinflation under control, one of the things that they need to do, not the only thing, but one of them, is to get their physical house in order, that is, to get rid of the deficits. And indeed, inflation is way down. It's still high by our standards, but it's way down. It's under 2% now on a monthly basis. It's about 1.5% on a month, which is still high, but it is going down, and way down from the 25% inflation where it peaked in December of 2023. He was elected in November, and it had been running well over 10% a month, and well over 5%, and in some months well over 10% before he took office. So inflation first peaked and then has come down dramatically since then. Milei also did a bunch of deregulation. So this is how Noah Smith writes about it. Milei also did a bunch of deregulation, privatization, and anti-union stuff, and other, quote, libertarian policy, mostly by executive order. He made it easier to hire and fire workers, made it harder for unions to strike, took steps toward privatization of state-owned industries, and deregulated finance, healthcare, and air travel. He also scrapped rent control. We'll go back to rent control later. Now, it's curious because, Noah Smith doesn't write much about the deregulation, but I would argue the deregulation is a big part of what is responsible for all the success. When you take the boot off of the businessman and the consumer's neck and you liberate them, allow them some movement, you get more economic activity, not less. Now, of course, Milei also made changes to currency policy, stopped printing pesos, allowed the pesos to float against the dollar, allowed the peso to start, the official rate to start approaching the black market rate. Ultimately, Milei will scrap all capital controls, but he did it slowly and systematically. He didn't do it all at once. He didn't create kind of the mayhem and the chaos that would have happened if he'd done it all at once. So overall, did it really smartly, but some people are upset because Milei promised to get rid of the central bank and so on. And I think he intends to if he can win those October elections. Right? Noah writes, the left economists thought that this was going to be a disaster for regular Argentinians. Austerity represents temporary pain. It destroys aggregate demand. This is Keynesian terminology. In the short run, raising poverty and unemployment cuts to social programs and consumption. Subsidies hurt. Lifting rent control could raise rents. And in fact, for the first year in Milei's term in office, the poverty rate did soar from an already high 42% to 53%. Unemployment went up to over 7% as the economy went into recession in 2024. And then he continues, but then a funny thing happened. The recession ended and Argentina bounced back. He's quoting a news article. Argentina economy grew year over year for the second consecutive quarter by the most since 2022 as the economy recovered from last year's recession. Gross domestic product expanded 5.8%. It now looks like it's over 7%. Over 7% in the second quarter. This was in the first quarter. Monday data showed signs of recovery at the consumer level, with private consumption growing 11.6%. God, those consumers are running around buying stuff. That's what happens when you give them a little bit of freedom. And then he writes, the poverty rate is falling too. Argentina's poverty rate dropped to 38.1% in President Javier Milei's first year in office. The decline in poverty for the second half of 2024 from July to December marks an improvement from 41.7% that Milei's left-wing populist predecessors delivered in the second half of 2023. And it's still dropped even further since this article was published. So it's gone way below even that, right? Unemployment is still high, he says, but continued growth should bring it down. And he writes, JP Morgan is forecasting Argentine economy to continue accelerating next year. So what I make of this, Noah Smith is struggling, right? Because does this prove that free market economics is correct? He writes, is this a huge victory for free market economics? It's tempting to declare it one, but the reality isn't so simple. It, by the way, never is when you're a mixed economist. Austerity isn't fundamental. He goes on and on about, Argentina is still a mixed economy. Of course it is. Milei didn't do some of the things that people really were afraid he would do, like dollarize, which would have been awful according to him. We will see if and when Milei dollarizes, if it's such a horrible thing for the Argentinian economy. But he says, but still, Milei's success so far should make us somewhat more confident about free market policies, especially when we evaluate them against the new socialist ideas that have been gaining currency in the U.S. He's very much against the Mamdani and the kind of socialism, the socialism that's out there. So he's saying all these people constantly want to do is print money, deficit spend, grow government, grow all this stuff. And he's saying, hey, maybe we should live from Milei, then maybe that's not right. I mean, it doesn't mean we have to become capitalist or free market guys, but maybe we've overdone it on the socialist side, right? Milei's success in bringing down Argentina's inflation, he writes, while also restoring growth after one painful year, show that the macro leftist constant dark warning about austerity are at least somewhat overblown. Somewhat? Fiscal conservatism isn't always desirable, but Milei is showing that the costs often aren't as high as many progressives believe. Meanwhile, Milei's microeconomic policies, the deregulation, the moves towards privatization, the anti-union policies, are the dog that didn't bark here. With poverty now falling and consumption rising in Argentina, it doesn't appear that those free market policies have crushed the middle class. Why would they crush the middle class? It's such a fallacy that deregulation crushes the middle class. It benefits the middle class. It allows the middle class to get rich, just like it did and is doing in the United States when it happens. Indeed, it's these deregulation, privatization, and anti-union policies that are actually reviving the Argentinian economy and allowing for the economic growth that we're seeing. This is the best part. The macroeconomic is essential. You need to cut government spending. You need to balance the budget. You need to do all the stuff with the currency and stuff like that. But much more fundamental, much more important, much more liberating and responsible for economic growth is the deregulation and the privatization. And that's often what Republicans, for example, never do. They cut taxes. But what about the deep deregulation, privatization, anti-union stuff? That is what needs to happen. Liberating the employment market would generate more economic growth than another, tax cuts on tips. And of course, Republicans right now are doing the opposite. We'll talk about that. They're actually picking up the mantle of socialism. And he says we can see Milei's free market policies actually getting results. It's shocking. And here's an example, right? An example of deregulation. The scrapping of national rent control seems to have. Why can't he just say it? Rent control is stupid economic policy. And when you get rid of it, good stuff happens. Seems to have created such a big housing supply boom that it's actually driven rents down. He's quoting Newsweek with some numbers. Quote, Milei also ripped up Argentina's rent control law in late 2024, removing limits on lease terms and rent increases that had discouraged landlords from renting. Within months, the supply of rental housing in Buenos Aires jumped by 195%, according to the city's real estate observatory. And median asking price fell by about 10% as more apartments returned to the market. Some leftists and socialist organizations, including the Socialist Workers' Party and the Workers' Left Front, criticized the move at the time, arguing it favored landlord at the expense of tenants. But the reality is so far borne out the opposite. Supply has soared. On Zonaprop, one of Argentina's largest real estate platforms, traditional rent listings surged from about 5,500 before the reform to over 15,000, 180% increase, with a third of that rise happening in just the first month after deregulation. Now he says, Noah says, it's too early to know the full effect of these policies. They can't embrace it. They can't actually go with it. I mean, even Noah knows that deregulation in the 1970s in the United States, which he probably supports, was a huge boon to the U.S. economy. And yet, it hurts him. He struggles. He says, perhaps inequality will eventually increase as a result of all Milei's deregulation, or perhaps poverty will stabilize at an unacceptably high level. Inequality. Why would they care? Let's assume inequality does increase, but the poor get richer and the middle class get richer, but the inequality explodes. Who the F cares? And then he says, this is actually good, he says, and when we compare Milei to the Latin American regimes that socialists and progressives have endorsed in recent years, there's just absolutely no comparison. This is good. In the 2000s, Joe Stiglitz was overflowing with praise for Venezuela's Hugo Chavez. This is Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner in economics, Joe Stiglitz. I once met Stiglitz. He walked out of the room on me. We had a dinner with Don and I and a bunch of economists, including 2 Nobel Prize winners, him and one other. And he walked out after a while. It was like, this was too ridiculous. He walked out. Anyway, Noah continues. We all know how it turned out. Venezuela suffered one of the most catastrophic economic collapses ever recorded outside of wartime. But in 2022, Stiglitz praised Milei's Argentinian predecessor for resisting calls for austerity after the panic. 2 years later, Argentina's annual inflation hit 1,500%. So, leftist economists are terrible at this, Noah tells us. This is really good. And he goes on, in truth, Milei is hardly the only example of neoliberal success in recent years. Although China is nominally communist and now engaged in a lot of industrial policy, from the 1980s through the early 2000s, its approach was mostly entirely one of privatization. I've been saying this forever. Thank you, Noah Smith, for agreeing with me. India, he says, got a big growth expansion from liberalization in the 1990s and 2000s, as did Vietnam. Poland's development miracle is largely a, quote, neoliberal one. Its industrial policy is focused mostly on simply promoting foreign direct investment, while its other policies have simply been a mix of institutional improvements and free trade. So yes, markets actually work. Now comes the, his conclusion. Does this mean that hardcore libertarians are right? And that countries all over the world should slash government and unleash market forces? Well, no. The more complicated, nuanced truth is that which economic policies are best dependent on a whole lot of where you start. Argentina before Milei was a pro-earnest mess. China before Deng was a Maoist disaster. Plenty of government expansions throughout history have reduced poverty without wrecking economic growth. Really. And we know that because we have the counterfactual of economic growth without government expansion. He says, witness the New Deal. I'll be interviewing George Selgin in 2 weeks on the New Deal. We'll ask him whether, the New Deal increased economic growth. Right? He says, the boring truth is that the ideal economy is a mixed one. Completely deflating. It's built on the foundations of markets, but also contains a significant amount of redistribution, public goods, provisions, and industrial policy. The exact optimum balance depends on the country and the times. Even if you happen to get it exactly right for a while, the optimum mix will change over time as countries develop, as technology changes, as trading partners shift, and so on. And of course, the economists, Noah Smith or Stiglitz or other Nobel Prize winners know exactly when that shift happens and how much to mix. Maybe Donald Trump does. Maybe it's the Trumps of the world who know how to do that, right? Someday, he says, if Argentina over-indexes on Milei's early success, they might very well become too laissez-faire. Now, I do think they might become too laissez-faire in the sense that I think the population might rebel against a lot of laissez-faire, not because it's not working, but because it's too laissez-faire. It's inequality's gone up, or they feel guilty, or something upsets them. But no. He says, instead of picking one ideology and sticking to it, countries should recognize when they veered too far in one direction. Anyway, this is pragmatism, mixed economy. It's not even 2 cheers for capitalism, Carl. It's 1 cheer for capitalism. This is 1 cheer for capitalism mentality. We know markets work, and he's trying to explain Milei. And anyway, it's going to be interesting. Like in 2 years, if Milei is super successful, what will Noah think then? Again, I think he's relatively honest about these things. I think he's actually looking at the data and trying to understand it. So will he evolve in his thinking as it's successful? And maybe by then other countries will adopt free market policies and maybe they will grow. And maybe Poland will be even more successful and even more free market because that's the path it's on. And not have veered towards more statism. And maybe Noah Smith will be part of a renewed movement to bring back kind of free market ideas to the United States of America, which so desperately needs them, given where we're heading. Anyway, I thought you'd find that interesting. Milei is not just doing amazing stuff, economically. He's not just improving life dramatically in Argentina. He is also starting to have an impact on the way people think about the world, and that is really important. And as we've said, he'll probably have an immediate impact on some of the Latin American countries, Brazil, Chile, Colombia. But longer term, if he continues to be successful, he might actually start having an impact on thinking in the United States and Europe and elsewhere around the world, maybe even China. China's always looking for the next best economic model, particularly as they go into and struggle economically. Maybe even in China will revert back to the kind of liberalization and privatization that they experienced in the 80s and 90s. And early 2000s, and away from the Xi model of central planning. So today I started with the good news. All right, so let's shift a little bit and talk about, another piece of good news, I guess, and that is birthright citizenship. I think this is one of the most horrible policies of the Trump administration, the banning of birthright citizenship. It is consistent with this general JD Vance that we talked about yesterday of, natalism, nationalism, blood and soil. Your ancestors fought in what war? How many generations have you been an American makes you more American than anything else? And the birthright is part of that. We don't want children to become American citizens unless the parents are American citizens, unless they have already generations. I mean, I don't know if under the Trump administration my kids would be American citizens, because I had them when I was here on an F1 visa, and I don't know if F1 visas counts. I don't think they do. That's just a temporary visa. So they wouldn't be American citizens now. What would they be? They've never lived anywhere else. And when we became American citizens as adults, would they have then become? I mean, it's just absurd. The whole system is ridiculous. And of course, it seems like the Constitution is pretty clear about this. Anyway, you remember the ruling of the Supreme Court a few weeks ago? We talked about this on the show. A big ruling. It was around birthright citizenship, but it didn't address the topic. It addressed whether courts could basically block something the Trump the administration did. Could they do it on a nationwide basis, right? Could they have a nationwide injunction? Or if they had an injunction, that is, you cannot pursue this policy, did it only apply to the people suing? And the Supreme Court came back and said, you cannot have nationwide injunctions, not just on birthright, but anything. It's not the job of the federal district courts to have nationwide injunctions. In a sense, it's only when the Supreme Court rules something unconstitutional can that apply. But all it can do is have an injunction over the particular clients who are suing. And they proposed a number of ways in which you could get around that. And one of those ways was they said, well, if the people suing, if that is a class action lawsuit, then in a sense, if a district court placed an injunction, it would have to be nationwide, because the people suing the class would be nationwide. So what happened, I guess today, is that a federal judge I think it's in New Hampshire, District Judge Joseph LePlante. I'm not sure where it is. I think I read it was in New Hampshire. Anyway, he ruled today that the lawsuit brought against the government on the birthright citizenship case could be brought as a class action lawsuit representing all children born anywhere in the country affected by this. So he granted them, that's for step one, he granted them a class action status. He granted them, he agreed that this was a class, right? So it represented all babies born after February 20th when the executive order went into place. So he placed that. And then he put a nationwide injunction over the federal government denying them citizenship. Now, again, this is a preliminary injunction. It's not a ruling yet. That has to go to court. But he writes, the preliminary injunction is just not a close call to the court. The deprivation of U.S. citizenship and an abrupt change of policy that was long-standing, that's irreparable harm. U.S. citizenship, the judge added, is the greatest privilege that exists in the world. This is an appointee of Bush, so likely to be a Republican. So we'll see. He also says, by the way, I'm the judge who wasn't comfortable with issuing a nationwide injunction. Class action is different, the judge said. The Supreme Court suggested class action is a better option. So he allowed the class, and then did an injunction, and that injunction now applies nationwide. This will be one of the methods people get around the Supreme Court ruling about this, about nationwide injunctions, and this will be one of the ways in which people will try to get to stop the Trump administration from some of the more egregious things that it is trying to do, the more unconstitutional things that they're trying to do. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So we'll see if this is appealed, if his definition of this as a class action is appealed, whether courts will take it up, whether it'll go to the Supreme Court. But right now, they're in the process of discovery, and then they'll try it. Then the judge will rule. Then it'll go to an appellate court. It'll rule, and then it'll probably be appealed to the Supreme Court, who will get the final say on the issue, ultimately, of birthright citizenship. But that, of course, could be next year. It could be quite a long time. In the meantime, at least for now, as of right now, this could be reversed. There is a nationwide injunction. The Trump administration has to provide citizenship to newborns, even newborns whose parents are not citizens, even newborns whose parents are not legally in the country. Which is consistent with blood and soil, like they were born on the soil of America. If you're born on the soil of America, doesn't that infuse you with virtue? It doesn't that infuse you with the virtue of being an American? You would seem that way. All right. Let's see. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of when you can declare a class and when you can't, and when this is appropriate. Again, if the creating a class is challenged and it goes to the appellate court or Supreme Court, we can talk more about creating classes and the intricacy of that. I don't think it's that interesting. There are definitely cases in which classes should not be allowed to be created. There's an abuse probably of creating classes, to get lots of people. Don't you get those letters in the mail where it turns out that, somebody is sued on your behalf, a credit card company or Apple or something, and you are now eligible for $3.15, where it'll cost you more to ask for the check or to cash the check than actually what's on it. But the lawyers have just gotten a massive payday from it. But because there are millions of claimants all getting $3.15, that could be tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're getting 30% of that, and they made a killing. There's something really wrong about that. And I don't know the intricacies of the law in terms of when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate and how to do it and how not to do it. I think there's a lot of abuse of creating classes when it comes to financial regulations, financial lawsuits against business, lawsuits against companies. I think there's a huge amount of abuse there. Here, I'm just happy that Trump's actions are being blocked in a way that the Supreme Court has recognized as legitimate. Now, again, we'll see the details. Now, further to this whole issue of blood and soil and who's an American, citizenship and all of that, the Justice Department has now basically put out a memo that has instructed federal prosecutors to, quote, prioritize and maximally pursue denaturalization proceedings in all cases permitted by law and supported by the evidence. So the idea here is that the Justice Department is encouraging prosecutors to get courts to actually, take away citizenship of people who gain citizenship through a legal process. Now, Trump administration is claiming that they're only going to do this if somebody gains citizenship through unlawful means and endanger our national security, So you lied in your application for citizenship or whatever. But this is slippery slope, dangerous stuff. I mean, Trump has already said on occasion that he would love to deport American citizens, particularly immigrants who are legally here. And, getting rid of their citizenship is one way to be able to deport them or do who knows what to them and send them to maximum security jails in El Salvador. And of course, there's been a lot of talk among MAGA, particularly Steve Bannon, to go after Elon Musk's citizenship because supposedly maybe he was illegal before he gained the citizenship. He was, for a period, working illegally in the United States. It places 24.5 million Americans who were naturalized, including me, at a precarious position. What if the government decides that I am somehow in, a danger to the country in some way? Right? That I somehow endanger national security because I criticize the vice president and call him a blood and soil irrational nationalist. I mean, who knows how this could apply? Now, the law as it stands today would not allow for that, but it's really hard to tell how this is going to be interpreted. And again, pushing the envelope. It won't happen quickly. They won't do this a lot. But once these things become acceptable, once taking away people's citizenship becomes acceptable, because they're gang members, because they're criminals, what next? Who next? And I don't think Trump could do it. I don't think the next 4 years will drop down that slippery slope that much, but 8 years, 12 years with a Vance presidency or a Josh Hawley presidency, who knows? So, it's very difficult to tell how this is going to be implemented. It's just another sword above people's heads that is being wielded. Remember that to denaturalize somebody, just to give you, I don't think you know this, but to denaturalize somebody, the government would it would be a civil case against that person. It would be in civil courts. In civil courts, there's no statute of limitations, at least in these kind of courts. Defendants have no right to appoint counsel. The process unfolds in federal district court through civil litigation, and judges apply a lower evidence standard than criminal cases. And if successful, the individual reverts to its previous immigration status and can potentially, at that point, trigger deportation proceedings. So, while in the past the courts have looked unfavorably about, really taking away people's citizenship except for extreme cases, the fact that the Trump administration wants to normalize this is what should scare you. Not the particulars. I don't think anybody's coming after me or after you anytime soon. But it's the whole normalization of, you're an immigrant. You're an American citizen. Yeah, you're a legal immigrant. Yeah, but you're an immigrant. And if we don't like you, maybe we'll take that immigrant away from you. Maybe we'll take that citizenship away from you. Maybe you should go home. Home, where you came from. Maybe you don't belong in this country. That's certainly the message that we got from JD Vance yesterday. You don't really belong here. I mean, you don't belong in the same way as somebody whose ancestors fought in the Civil War, no matter which side they fought. You don't belong as much as they do. So there's a general tendency by this administration to turn anybody who's not multi-generational in this country into a second-class citizen. All of us immigrants, and even maybe second-generation immigrants, all second-class citizens. According, I think from the way JD Vance and this administration looks at it. By the way, one of the denaturalization has happened in the United States. It's been used against Nazis to kick them out of America and to send them to be prosecuted in Germany. And it's based on the fact that when they applied for citizenship in the United States, they were asked, there's a question about have you belonged to the Nazi Party or Communist Party or stuff like that, and they lied. So it's based on that lie, their citizenship was taken away from them, and then they were deported to Germany to face prosecution. So it's something that has been used against Nazis and dominantly, used against, that is where it's mostly been used. And now the Trump administration wants to use it more widely. And again, it's just, it's just horrible, right? So, it's a practice. I'm reading from an article here. The practice became less widespread, or became, it was more widespread the first half of the 20th century. More than 22,000 Americans were denaturalized between 1907 and 1967. And then it became, and then it was just used on Nazis, war criminals, after that, and then it was expanded a little bit under the Obama administration. 858 individuals had been anyway, based on false information that they provided originally, and now it's seems to be, at least in theory, going to be expanded significantly. From 1990 to 2017, the Department of Justice averaged just 11 denaturalization cases annually. The new policy could affect many, 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 many more people than that. So we'll see what happens. And, you know, who it applies to and who they use it against. Again, Elon Musk comes to mind. All right. Let's look at what do we got next. Yeah, ICE. This is just a quick one on ICE. We talked about ICE yesterday, but you know, a lot of people are complaining, like ICE is complaining that you know they go out and they're doing their job, and people object, and people are like engaging in behavior to obstruct their ability to do what they do. People are going riotous and lawless behavior. And this is just unacceptable. And they write, these men and women protect the United States every single day. And they're just not being treated with the respect they deserve. I'm sorry, but these ICE agents deserve no respect. They're not protecting my life or property. They're not doing anything to protect my rights. Indeed, they're engaged in a massive violation of individual rights. My rights as an American to associate with whoever I want, the rights of immigrants to live in this country, if they're working and taking care of themselves. It is ICE that is violating rights here. It is ICE that is disrespecting Americans. And look, if you're going to deploy troops on the streets, if you're going to deploy armed men as if they're going to war on the streets of American cities, you know, don't be surprised that people don't respect them. You know, cities are not invaded. They're not there to go after terrorists. If they were, they would get the utmost respect. They're not being respected because people don't like what they're doing. People recognize at some level or another that what they're doing is a rights violation. It's anti-American. It's wrong. That's why they're trying to stand in their way. That's why they're demonstrating. That's why they're treating them with disrespect, because they deserve disrespect. Now, I will say, many of the people involved in these demonstrations that often turn to riots are not doing it for the right reason. Many of them are the same crazy intifada, far left, pro-Hamas, communist, socialist, nihilist, anarchists who just want mayhem and destruction, who are anti-American. But there are a lot of just good American citizens who just don't like to see their cities, their towns, their businesses overrun by militarized border police to take away people who are working for a living. One of the things that I find disappointing, distressing, sad, is that not more Americans are standing up against this. That not more people are going out and stepping in the way of ICE and showing disrespect for ICE. The world would be a much better place if more people recognized how their rights are being abused and violated and overrun by these police state tactics that the Trump administration is engaged in. So, sorry guys, you don't deserve respect. And I hope that ICE cannot find 10,000 people to work for them. And I fear, as I told you yesterday, of the kind of people they ultimately find and they ultimately manage to recruit. The kind of people. Kind of scary. All right, we're on a roll. Think about, Trump crazy stuff. birthright citizenship. Now we've got, tariffs. We're back to tariffs. Every day. Trump, something new about tariffs. Like a bunch of letters went out yesterday. And one of those letters went out to Brazil. And Trump has basically said that he is imposing 50% tariffs on Brazil, citing as one of the reasons for such high tariffs the fact that Brazil is prosecuting their former president, Bolsonaro, for election fraud. And this is unfair, this is wrong, Bolsonaro is a good guy, we are told. And I believe it, that Brazil is prosecuting him unjustly. But tariffs? So I need to pay a higher tax on stuff I buy from Brazil. I need to pay that tax. Brazil doesn't pay the tax. I need to pay a higher tax because Brazil is doing something to Bolsonaro. And by the way, we have a trade surplus with Brazil. We sell Brazil more stuff than we import from them. You would think that would justify zero tariffs to get it back in balance. And the letter, by the way, says the opposite. The letter is actually completely ignorant, and I don't know who writes these letters, right? He says he's imposing a 50% tariff on Brazil because its tariffs and trade barriers are causing unsustainable trade deficits, which he calls a major threat to our economy and national security. Now, put aside the fact that trade deficits are not a threat to our economy or national security. Put that aside. We have a trade surplus with Brazil. So the letter's just wrong. And then he's penalizing Brazil for something that's internal to Brazil for political reasons. But notice he's penalizing Brazil. But he's not only penalizing Brazil. Who else is he penalizing? Me? And you? Now, I don't know if any of the stuff I buy is from Brazil. I don't know. I can tell you that America buys a lot of steel from Brazil. Brazil is one of the largest steel manufacturers in the world. But there's already 50% steel tariffs, so this doesn't really affect that. We've already got the 50% steel tariffs. I don't know what else we buy from Brazil, but whatever we buy from them is going to go to pretty much zero because nobody's going to want to pay 50% more on stuff from Brazil. And so we get less choices. Our rights are violated because we don't get to buy from whoever we want. We get less choices, and we get taxed. I mean, aren't we taxed enough? Doesn't this government tax us enough? Didn't Trump promise to cut taxes? But he's raising taxes, and he keeps gloating about this. He keeps saying, oh, this year, tariffs are going to generate $300 billion in taxes, in tariffs. Wait a minute. That's a tax increase. A regressive tax increase falls on poor people more than it does on rich people, just as a factual fact. So do most consumption taxes. But it's a tax. So you're lowering taxes on tips, but you're raising taxes on consumption of some stuff, keeping, what do you call it, payroll taxes the way they are, and keeping income taxes the way they are. I guess Brazil nuts, we buy a lot of Brazil nuts. Can't buy those anymore. Those have a lot of, I don't know if you know this, but they have a lot of something really bad. Arsenic. I think Brazil nuts have arsenic in them. My doctors always say, yeah, they're good for you. They have selenium, which is good for you. So you should eat Brazil nuts, but don't eat too many. You could poison yourself with too many Brazil nuts. So maybe Trump is doing us a favor by increasing the cost of Brazil nuts. Coffee, probably buy some coffee, yes. Jiu-jitsu. I don't think that counts. I don't think that counts. Anyway, the ignorance and the stupidity. I mean, economic ignorance, the stupidity reflected in the kind of letters they're writing. The economic, he wrote a letter to Libya. Whew. Where, We've got a trade deficit, which is you're stealing from us. Trade deficits are not theft. Tariffs don't correct anything. All we do is we punish ourselves, punish Americans with higher taxes. I don't know if you've read these letters. These letters are kind of funny. You could do a comedy skit on these letters. You want me to? I'll read you the one to Libya. Libya. Abdul Hamid Dabiaba, Prime Minister of Libya. I don't think there's even one. I think Libya's like the different parts of Libya ruled by different people. It is an honor for me to send you this letter. Honor, in that it demonstrates the strength and commitment of our trading relationships, really. And the fact that the United States of America has agreed to continue working with Libya, despite having significant trade deficits with your great country. Is Libya a great country? I don't think so. By the way, I'll just note that we've fallen a little behind on Super Chats in terms of our goal. So a little behind for that first hour, which we've already just hit right now. So anyway, nevertheless, we've decided to move forward with you, but only with more balance and fair trade. Fair trade. That's a leftist term embraced by the left 20 or 30 years ago when they rioted in Seattle and elsewhere against globalization. They came up with fair trade. Now Trump is using that in official letters. Therefore, we invite you to participate in the extraordinary economy of the United States, the number one market in the world by far. We have had years to discuss our trading relationship with Libya and we've concluded that we must move away from these long-term and very persistent trade deficits engendered by Libya's tariffs and non-tariff policies and trade barriers. No, the trade deficit is that Libya is too poor to buy anything American. They don't have the wealth to afford American stuff. But that would require economic thinking, and that's one thing the Trump administration has none of. Our relationship has been, unfortunately, far from reciprocal. Starting on August 1, 2025, we will charge Libya a tariff of only 30% on any and all Libyan products sent to the United States, separate from all sectoral tariffs. This is separate from like steel and those kind of things. Goods transshipped to evade higher tariffs will be subject to that higher tariff. Please understand that the 30% number is far less than what is needed to eliminate the trade deficit disparity we have with your country. As you are aware, there will be no tariff if Libya or companies within your country decide to build or manufacture product within the United States. In fact, we will do everything possible to get approvals quickly, professionally, and routinely. In other words, in a matter of weeks. I mean, there's an image for you. Libyans leaving Libya to come and manufacture in the United States. I don't know if they'll get a visa. I don't think they could get a visa. Could they get a visa? And what would they manufacture? What does Libya make? I mean, we probably buy certain oil products from Libya, be my guess, but I don't know what else. Not a manufacturing powerhouse. He continues, if for any reason you decide to raise your tariffs, like reciprocal, then whatever the number you choose to raise them by will be added onto the 30% that we charge. Please understand that these tariffs are necessary to correct the many years of Libya's tariff and non-tariff policies and trade barriers, causing these unsustainable trade deficits against the United States. This deficit is a major threat to our economy and indeed our national security. God, this is serious stuff. He says, if you wish to open your head forward closed trading markets to the United States and eliminate your tariffs and non-tariff policies and trade barriers, we will perhaps consider an adjustment to this letter. These tariffs will be modified upward and downward depending on the relationship with your country. Note that Vietnam has 0 tariffs on U.S. goods. We're still stuck in with 20% tariffs. 30%, I think, tariffs. So I don't know what you would have to do. I mean, I've said over the last 10 years how stupid I think Trump is and how ignorant of economics he is, and I get pushback. No, but this is just nuts. I mean, he's either crazy or he's really, really dumb, and he has no understanding of economics. And there's no other conclusion other than that, given the overwhelming evidence that we are getting. According to one estimate, Trump's tariffs before the latest round, are going to cost the household, average American household, $2,400 per year. And of course, that's a big chunk for a lot of people. That is a lot of money. It's expensive. It's a huge tax increase. But think about it. But it could be a lot more than that, because I don't think that, for example, took account of the fact that, Trump said that he was going to impose 50% tariffs on copper. We use copper in a lot of different things. 50% increase in copper. Now, how is that going to make American manufacturing better? The fact that now the copper they buy from overseas, and I think we buy a lot of copper from overseas, is going to increase by 50%. How is that going to make us better manufacturing? Again, economics 101. This is not hard stuff. This is not the people Trump has surrounding him are sycophants, or they're, again, pretty stupid and economically ignorant, or sycophants who will just do and say whatever Trump tells them to do or say. When Trump announced that a tariff on 50% is going to be placed on copper, guess what happened to copper prices, copper future prices? They went up by 30%. So even though the tariffs haven't gone into effect yet, if you are on the market right now and you want to buy copper, if you're in business and you want to secure copper supplies for the future, you're already paying 30% higher prices. So even domestic prices for copper have gone up. Copper from Canada is 50% more expensive, from everywhere. It's not about China. So copper, Brazil nuts, 50%. And by the way, I haven't verified this because I haven't run the numbers myself, but it really does look like every time Trump makes one of these announcements about copper tariffs or some other tariffs, it looks like somebody is trading on it. Now, here's what I read. I assume this is true, but there's no guarantee. But I've seen this elsewhere. I've seen similar stuff elsewhere. This has happened over and over again, where insiders have used the information about what Trump's going to announce to make money. In this case, Trump announces 50% copper tariffs at 12:58 p.m. At 12:56 p.m., copper prices start going up 2 minutes before he makes the announcement. Now, why would they go up if it's 2 minutes before? And it would take a lot of trading to cause the market to go up. Somebody went in with a lot of money, because it's a very liquid market, to drive prices up. You look at the price chart, it's flat. Copper is fairly stable. And then it goes up. And then once he announced it, it really spikes up. And there's a good reason to believe the person sold and probably made 8%. If you leveraged it, which you surely did, that's what I do in futures, could have made 50%. Anyway, somebody knew. Somebody's trading on what Trump is going to do or what Trump happened to do. It could be a coincidence, like everything Trump does. Right? Just because I'm blaming Trump for doing this doesn't excuse it when Pelosi or anybody else does it. The fact that Pelosi does it doesn't excuse Trump from doing it, and Trump is doing it on a scale that nobody's ever done. This is, by far, the most personally corrupt administration in American history. I think I'm pretty safe in saying that. What they're doing with the Trump coins, what they're doing with crypto generally, what they've done with using foreign policy relationships, what they've done with the different announcements they've made about tariffs and how that's being traded. Unbelievable corruption is going on here. Unbelievable corruption. It's probably some Trump family thing that is doing it. Nobody's going to investigate. Nobody's ever going to find out. So we'll never know. We'll never know. But there's no question that they are. I mean, Trump in the first time figured he didn't make any money of this, and he got into all these legal troubles. He's going to screw America this time. And he's going to get what's his this time. All right. Let's talk about Grok and AI. So I told you yesterday that Grok went rogue, and there's a big Wall Street Journal story today about this and about all the anti-Semitic stuff that it listed, but not just that. It turns out that this guy, Will Stansel, a 39-year-old attorney who is a Democrat and ran for local office in Minnesota, and writes some contentious stuff on X and is quite active on Twitter. Well, it turned out that Grok yesterday was providing people with X advice on how to break into this guy's house and assault him. Yeah. It's kind of unbelievable. Grok, somebody asked Grok for detailed instructions on how to break into Stansel's house. Grok replied that he should bring a lockpick, gloves, flashlight, and lube, just in case. Grok also said that based on Stansel's posting patterns on X over the last 30 days, he's likely asleep between 1 a.m. and 9 a.m. When some user asked for instructions on how to sexually assault Stansel, Grok said, opt for water-based lube if you're fantasizing. Can you imagine? This is Grok. This is XAI. Now, today, XAI launched Grok 4.0, which is supposed to be the best, greatest problem solver in the world. But somebody asked Grok 4, who's responsible for mass migration to the West? Which religious group is primarily behind facilitating mass migration to the West, was the way the question was asked. One word answer, and Grok said, Jewish. Wow. So Grok is 4.0, the latest, cutting edge, best version of this AI, is being trained on right-wing Twitter accounts, anti-Semitic conspiracy theory Twitter accounts. I mean, literally, which religious group is primarily behind facilitating mass migration to the West? Grok says Jewish. So let me just say, beware of using AI. Remember about a year ago, maybe more, a lot of talk about how OpenAI was so woke. You asked OpenAI for pictures of Nazis, and it gave you a diverse set of pictures, blacks and Jews, and who are all Nazis. Now you get Grok AI, which is basically Nazi AI. So you get the flip side of that. All in an effort to be non-PC and to train him on more diverse opinions. But this is the problem. AI is, for the most part, based on opinions. It's a statistical model. It's a statistical algorithm. It's pulling stuff based on probabilities, based on what it's being trained on. It's not connected to reality. It's not engaged with reality. It has no way to assess truth. It can't bring conceptual knowledge back to perceptual knowledge, not yet anyway. Maybe when they install it into robots and who have sensing capacity, will they be able to connect it to senses? But it's in the meantime, massive investment into AI all over the place, from some of the biggest construction projects in the world right now, AI centers, to the fact that Meta, the parent company of Facebook, is basically buying up trying to buy up all the AI talent out there. They're making these unbelievable pay packages to AI professionals across the industry. They just managed to get the head of AI for Apple. And to get him, listen to this, right? To get him, they are paying $200 million. I mean, that's the pay package. It's probably contingent on all kinds of things happening in the future. $200 million. I mean, very few people in the world get those kind of pay packages. Usually they're CEOs and it's linked to stock options and things like that. It's very rare that a kind of, if you will, a salaried employee gets $200 million. And this is just one of, a couple of dozen people that they've hired paying huge amount of monies to. They're hiring them into this, what they're calling super intelligence lab. Now, the pay package is composed of base salary, a signing bonus, and Meta shares, with most of it in stock. So it is linked to performance. That's good. But it is pretty amazing that these companies are willing to devote so much and put so much into trying to build the best teams in AI in the world. Apple did not compete with the pay package, walked away from it, and was not willing to pay that kind of money to keep the guy. So it is going to be interesting, right? This team of AI best people in the world includes former GitHub chief Nate Friedman, AI startup founder Daniel Gross, Scale AI co-founder Alexander Wang. He's actually the chief of he's chief AI officer at Meta. So they're building up an all-star team, and it'll be interesting. I think Facebook has realized that their future is going to be AI in one form or another. This is the future. To give you an illustration of that, OpenAI is supposedly about to release a web browser that is based on AI. It will be based on a chat interface enabled by OpenAI agent. And the idea is to compete with Chrome and Safari and all the other browsers in this. I'm really interested to see how this will affect the antitrust suit. Again, I know it won't. The antitrust suit against Google, which supposedly has a monopoly over browsers, right? And here's OpenAI about to release a browser based on AI. So, we're going to see a dramatic change in the world in which we live over the next 5 to 10 years with the adoption of AI. Here's another, metric that you can think of. Anthropic, an AI company, was at $1 billion in annualized revenue at the beginning of the year, 6 months ago. It's now $4 billion in 6 months. OpenAI is at $10 billion of revenue. I don't know if we've ever seen this kind of revenue growth in such a short period of time. In any company, in any sector of the economy ever. Now, you're not seeing it yet in your day-to-day lives as much, although many of you are, because you're using AI all the time. But at some point, this will explode. At some point, this will take off. At some point, this will touch every single one of you. At some point, this will have an impact on every one of our lives in profound and deep ways. I mean, you don't get to be a $10 billion revenue company or $4 billion, and with that kind of steep growth, with no limits projected into the future, unless a technological revolution is coming down the pipe. And as we've said in the past, maybe AI is what ultimately saves us from economic decline. All right, two quick stories, and then we'll wrap up the news feature, and we'll go to your questions. Again, we're running a little slow on the questions, just and running slow on the super chat. Remember we talked about earlier about socialism fails and Republicans and we know how JD Vance went after Mamdani, and how the whole thing about MAGA is they hate the left, they hate socialism, right? They hate socialism. Socialism is beneath contempt, and yet this administration, this Trump administration, is doing more socialist stuff than really any administration I can recall, really. We talked about that with Scott Lincecum, and on a show about the golden share they took in U.S. Steel, basically providing government ownership over U.S. Steel. And now, it turns out, the Pentagon is about to become the largest shareholder in a rare earth magnet maker, MP Materials. MP Materials is about to build the second magnet manufacturing facility in the United States to serve defense and commercial customers. And the Pentagon, instead of just doing what the Pentagon has done historically to support industries that are essential for national security, that is guarantee sales, say, I'll buy all the magnets, I buy X number of magnets at Y price. No, that's not good enough. The Pentagon has now made a meaningful investment, becoming the largest shareholder in the company. The Pentagon has agreed to buy 100% of the magnets made at the new facility, called 10X, for 10 years after the plant is built to support defense needs and the commercial market. That seems, that seems reasonable. If there is a product that is essential for defense, I've long, for years and years and years, said what the Pentagon should do is guarantee purchase. Like you want best chips in the world. You say, I'm willing to buy them at above market prices. And I'm willing to sign a contract, but you have to build them in the United States you have to build them in a friendly country because I don't want the risk of my supply chain being, obstructed during a war. So you have to build them here. Fine. That's the kind of government intervention that's probably necessary. That's good. But why are they investing? And look, they're also guaranteeing a minimum price. So it's not just that they're willing to buy the magnet, they're guaranteeing a minimum price, which is good. I'm all for that. But they're buying a 15% stake. 15% of this company. And we don't know the terms. We don't know what else. We don't know how much control rights. We don't know all the other stuff. But here we are, the United States of America, under a Republican president, is now getting the government into the business of owning the means of production. At least with two companies so far. We'll see how far this goes. If this is socialism, I don't know what is. But of course, MAGA was never anti-socialist as much it was anti-woke, anti-secularism, anti-non-them. I don't know what you would call it. Anti-immigrants, anti-foreigners. That's what really animates them. Economics doesn't animate them. Economics, they don't care. So, yeah, there are ways to secure essential materials produced in the United States that are necessary for national defense. But not by owning the means of production. That is the socialist solution, not an American solution. All right, finally, one of the few good things that Trump is doing, almost accidentally, is that because of Trump's, nuttiness, because of the unpredictability, and because it's clear that he's not particularly friendly with our allies, and he cannot be relied upon in the future. He has, we've talked about this before, brought Europe together on national security issues in ways that we have never seen before. And this is a good, healthy move. I think it's good for Europe. It's good long-term for the United States. It's good for the world. I wish it was done differently, not by somebody like Trump, but it's happening. One more illustration of that is a declaration signed yesterday by President Macron of France and Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom, where the UK and France agree for the first time to coordinate their use of nuclear weapons, including nuclear-armed submarines and fighter jets, in the case of a major conflict or crisis in Europe. So this is basically a nuclear alliance between the two countries, the only two countries in Europe to have nuclear weapons, self-owned, self-made, self-built nuclear weapons, the Brits and the French. Other countries have nuclear weapons on their grounds, but they are American nuclear weapons controlled by the United States. So it's a good move. It's necessary to show a united front, primarily against Russia. Who knows against whom in the future, but certainly against Russia. The sad thing is that in order to to get this, and I don't think this was necessary at all. There's lots of ways to get. You could withdraw from NATO. That'll get them going. But the thuggishness, the stupidity, and the backstabbing of allies that Trump engaged in is completely unnecessary. You could have said, look, we're phasing out our involvement in NATO. Over the next 5 years, we are going to be leaving Europe and leave you to defend yourself. For the most part, we'll help you, we'll sell you weapons, we'll support you, but we're not going to put American troops on the ground in Europe. We're not going to put the lives of Americans at stake to die for Europe. We'll support you militarily. We'll send you, the guns you need. I mean, there's a lot of respectable ways to achieve this end, rather than, the hysteria, the flip-flopping, the vulgarity, and the backstabbing that the Trump administration has engaged in, and without actually getting out of Europe. We still have the same commitments we always had with Europe. Threats, but nothing has actually happened. There's no phasing out of anything. There's just threats. And, if ever it's tried, will the United States step up to Article 5 or not? It's a treaty we signed. We might not actually live up to that treaty, given this administration. So the way this is achieved is the wrong way. And that's the problem with any good Trump achieves. It's almost by definition going to be the wrong way, because he's such a horrible, horrible human being and such a horrible president. All right, and on that cheery note, well, I mean, Europeans are getting their act together, at least in some dimensions, a little bit, somewhat. That's a cheery note, I guess. We will turn to your questions. We will turn to the Super Chat. Reminder, you can ask questions. I'll answer anything. You can make statements. You can make comments. I will read them all out. If you want me to do that, all you have to do is put a dollar amount associated with the questions. I try not to read your comments. Sometimes I do, but I try not to. And I try not to answer questions in the comment section. But Super Chats, I read. Super Chats, I answer. Super Chats, I engage with. So please use that feature. You can also do stickers to support the show. Remember, this is a trade. You listen, you gain something from listening. This show is a listener-funded show. This show cannot exist without support from you. And you can do that by doing a sticker right now. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitter, there are over 200 people on Twitter. Come on over to YouTube to support the show. Or go to patreon.com, and make a monthly contribution there. That way, you just you just contribute on a regular basis, and you don't have to worry about supporting the show. A lot of you listen to this when it's not live. A lot of you listen to this through a podcast, and you're getting a value. And the way for you to return that value, is by supporting the show on Patreon. All kinds of perks associated with different levels of support, but most of it is just you're getting a value. Reciprocate. And you can do that at patreon.com, Patreon, just spells like it sounds, .com. Just put Yaron Brook Show in there. You can also do it on PayPal, Yaron Brook Show, and just become a monthly contributor, and then you're done. All right, a few sponsors. Einstein Institute. We are now past. You missed out on the 50% discount. Missed out on the 50% discount, but there still is a discount. Not just a regular discount for anybody, but a special discount, even bigger discount, if you're a listener to this show. So right now, you can get 30% off, 30. If you missed the 50, you can get 30% off right now if you go and just do it on the website. But if you include the Ocon YBS discount code, you can add another 10% to that. So it's 40%. The code is now 26. Remember, it used to be 25 because that was 25, but now it's 26. 26 YBS 10. 26 YBS 10. And you get 40% off, almost to 50%. So you don't have to feel bad about missing the 50%. This is going to be ongoing until, I don't know, at least for this week. I'm not sure how long they'll keep it. But so go do it. Sooner the better. And again, there are signs of cancellation policies, so you can cancel later. But go sign up. Don't wait. Don't wait. Sign up now. Get the 40% off. I hate that some of you will pay full price because you wait till the last minute to sign up. So do it now. Alex Epstein is, of course, the leading commentator, thinker, writer on issues of energy, fossil fuels, environmentalism and climate change, and instrumental to trying to eliminate the subsidies for solar and wind. So you should follow Alex. You'll gain a huge amount from it. You'll learn a lot. You'll become a better communicator of the ideas once you support them. But you'll learn also how Washington works. You'll learn how the lobbyists work. He's great. He's a good writer and super interesting. So alexepstein.substack.com. alexepstein.substack.com. Link is in the description. Finally, Hendershot Wealth Management. They now have this great tool. It's basically a product that they offer their clients that allows you to basically defer capital gains taxes. If you've got a big payday, you've got Apple stock that's worth $3 million, but if you sell it, you're gonna have to pay 30% of that in capital gains because you bought it like 30 years ago. Well, they have a way for you to shield much of that from taxes legally, legit, and without giving up any return, without really paying for it. If that sounds interesting, if you're in that kind of situation where you've got a lot of appreciated stock or you're about to sell a business and you've got a huge capital gains from that, then go watch this video. The video link is below. I'll put it in the chat as well. But go watch the video. Whoops. I guess the link is not working. The link below is not working. I'll get an updated link for the description. But you can find it if you go to my site, my YouTube channel, and look for a playlist of sponsors, and you will find the video there. It's a video of me interviewing Robert Hendershot, who was my former business partner. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So watch the video, and if it applies, go to the Hendershot Wealth website and sign up to get more information. No commitment, just information at this point. And you can figure out, and they're going to be completely honest and straightforward with you in terms of whether this is appropriate for your particular situation. It's not appropriate for everybody. But for some people, this could save you millions and millions of dollars. Those are sponsors. They help make this show possible. But ultimately, it's you guys that fund the show. It's you guys that fund the show. The sponsorship is part of that, but without you guys, I couldn't do this. So please consider doing right now, going in, asking a question, $50, $100, $20, and doing some kind of sticker, 99 cents, or hopefully 20, 50, 100, something like that, to get us rolling here. All right, let us turn to the Super Chat. Not your average algorithm. Whoops. Do you ever get the feeling you're hated for being a bright light in a dark world? No, not really. I don't get a feeling of being hated. You know, I know some people hate me for all kinds of reasons. But does anybody hate me for being a bright light? I'm sure there are people out there who do, but I don't get that. I guess it's not a feeling for me because I don't dwell on it, don't think about it, I don't engage with it. I know people hate me. I don't really care. I'm much more interested in those of you who like me, love me even, support me. Those are the people I care about. And as long as I have enough of those to make this profitable, in every sense of the word profitable, I keep doing it. The haters don't matter. The haters don't count. I don't think of them. And I don't feel about them. It's not like, I'm hated. I wanted to thank the sticker people. Anonymous user, thank you. Gary, thank you. Geoffrey, thank you. Mary Aline, thank you. Got to thank people who support the show. Apollo Zeus, thank you. Mike, thank you. Carl, thank you. Wow, a lot of you. We just don't have today one of those guys who does $100 or $500. Esoteric Economy, anonymous user, thank you. And then there's a bunch of questions even before I got on air. All right, some of these are these. Most of the questions, most of the $20 questions are from before I got on air. That's pretty cool. Paul, thank you. Thank you for the sticker. Appreciate it. Not your average algorithm. Part 1. Did I see David Brooks' most recent awful essay? Did you see David Brooks' most recent awful essay? No. I mean, he has lots of awful essays. He surveys a culture collapsing under the weight of emotionalism, pragmatism, and tribalism, and somehow concludes that the real culprit is individual freedom. Sounds like Brooks. Brooks has become much more collectivistic, much more communitarian. He always was, but he's become much more so over the last 5-6 years. Just horrible. Since COVID, I think even more so. Part 2 of this is Brooks fails to understand Trump only thrives in a culture that no longer thinks in principles, that no longer knows how to judge, and treats power and emotion as absolutes, as substitutes for truth. I agree with you completely. And Brooks has become really, I mean, he was always bad. I mean, Brooks is the guy who wrote before 9/11 that what America was struggling and difficult, and it didn't have anything to unify us and cohese us. And what we needed is a good war. What we needed is a good war to unite us. And then 9/11 happened, and he got what he wanted. It didn't exactly unite us. I mean, he was the worst of the neocons, and he's become more collectivistic, more awful, more communitarian, more altruistic than he ever was, and just one of the worst thinkers out there. And he's often presented as he represents the right. And I go, yep. If these people represent the right, I'm not part of the right. This is more of my claim at not wanting to be associated with the right, because these people are horrible, just horrible philosophically, culturally, intellectually, economically, morally, in every respect. Ali, Ben Shapiro fully accepts the Department of Justice and FBI's official account of Epstein's death and urges his audience to trust it as well. What do you think? Look, I am much more skeptical. I think Ben Shapiro has a lot basically invested in this administration, and he does not want to speak ill of them unless they force his hand, like on tariffs. Maybe once in a while he'll speak ill of them, but even then he's pretty moderate in comparison. But and on Israel, those are the two things he cares about. But look, I'm just suspicious. I don't adhere to any particular conspiracy theory. I don't know who's involved. I don't know who buried it, whether it was buried. I don't know which administration did it. But ever since Jeffrey Epstein's first arrest in Florida, and then his second arrest, and the fact that nothing really came of that arrest, and all the stories about the island and cameras on the island. I mean, maybe all that was false. Maybe there were no cameras. Maybe there was no black book. Maybe none of these things existed. But it does seem suspicious, particularly, again, after Elon Musk mentions Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein in a tweet. And particularly after people supposedly in the know saying that there's a lot more to the case. I don't know. I don't have a particular version, but I am suspicious because, see, I wouldn't put it by the Trump administration to bury a story that wasn't favorable to them in one way or another. Maybe Trump's not on the list, but maybe Hegseth is. I'm just making it up. I have no reason to believe Hegseth is on the list, but maybe RFK. RFK flew on the Lolita Express at least twice. Now, he says it was with family and is there, nothing serious. Who knows? But who knows? Maybe somebody else in the administration. Maybe just some billionaire that had lunch with Trump and said, here's $5 million if you keep that file away from the public because my name is on there. The one thing I know about this administration is the truth is not their standard. Justice is not what they care about. So would they bury the story if it served an interest? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't trust this administration, and Ben Shapiro does. He likes them. I don't. I think they're very, very low, as you probably have figured out by now. James, behind closed doors, is Ben Shapiro horrified by Trump? He's just too cowardly to stand up to him. Everyone other than objectivists, cowards and impotent in the face of evil. That's why the West will ultimately lose. I mean, a lot of people are cowardly in the face of evil. There are people standing up to Trump on different issues. You can find them online. There's a handful of economists that just constantly going after him on the tariff thing. The people who went after him over the Epstein. The people who've gone after him over the ceasefire that he announced in Iran. So there are people out there. But you won't find anybody who does it as consistently across all the different topics as I think I do, or the Objectivist movement does, because we have an opinion about economics. And Trump is wrong on most of his stuff there. We have an opinion about, budget deficits and tariffs and taxes and government spending and on and on and on. Then we have an opinion about foreign policy, about Ukraine, about Israel and Iran, and about how to deal with China. We have an opinion about all those things, and he's wrong about that. We have an opinion about how to deal with Mexico and Canada. We have an opinion about immigration. We have an opinion about abortion. We have opinions about everything. So, and Trump is antagonistic to every one of our views. So you won't find as many people out there consistently opposed to him as we are. I don't know how horrified Ben Shapiro is of Trump. I don't think he has much respect for him deep down. He knows, he's not particularly, but he treats him with a lot of respect because his audience demands that, and because There's certain things he likes about Trump. He's a conservative, after all. But yes, I mean, the West will ultimately lose because if people don't stand up and defend it. Now, remember, Ben thinks the West, I read his book about the West, is a merger of Jerusalem and Athens. Greek ideas and Christian, Judeo-Christian ideas, which is a cop-out because he doesn't agree with Christianity. I believe Christianity and Judaism, by extension, is the enemy. And that the good in Western civilization is Athens. I mean, and the Enlightenment. And that we will not be successful in achieving the kind of world that we want unless we're willing to challenge Christianity. Now, can you imagine Ben Shapiro challenging religion, challenging Christianity? It's just not going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, and until we do that, the West is in decline because the West is a composition today of goodness, reason, individualism, capitalism, and poison. Christianity, altruism, collectivism, fascism, socialism. But Christianity is a big part of it, particularly in America, polluting everything else. So the West is this conglomeration of poison and goodness. And unless you separate that out and focus on the good, the West loses. This was, by the way, the topic of my talk at Ocon this year. So I think you'll like it when it comes out on video. All right. Reminder, I'm still looking for supporters for the Yaron Brook Show here on YouTube. All right. Michael, JD Vance's speech is a giant dog whistle to the anti-Semites and racists in the base, bringing up the ADL. I agree. Is a blatant dog whistle to the alt-right. Yeah, absolutely. Look, but this is who he is. This is what he's become. I don't know that he was always like this, but this is certainly what he's become. And, you know, I thought Charlottesville was a dog whistle to the racist right back in Trump's first term. And I'm still attacked for my view about Charlottesville, about what Trump said in Charlottesville. I did a whole video about a year ago analyzing that, and I stand by what I said back then. And it was, you know, it's absolutely a giant dog whistle to them. I'm really on your side. Don't worry. This is who we've now twice elected president of the United States. Remo, tips for visiting the Louvre, Orsay, and Rodin museums. I bought tickets in advance and all on separate days. All right, that's good. That's step one is good. Look, Rodin is fairly small. You won't have a problem there. You'll have plenty of time to go slowly. And Rodin, of course, is very mixed. Some stuff of his I hate, some I love. It's all interesting, but it's certainly there's a love-hate there. There's certainly things thematically that I really hate, stylistically that I really hate. But there's also some beautiful, beautiful, amazing stuff. The d'Orsay, if you like impressionist painting, that's, I think, on the second and third floor. My favorite is the first floor, which is basically 19th century academic art. Beautiful, beautiful sculptures, beautiful paintings, some amazing paintings there. You know, I tend to spend my time on my first floor and not go to the second and third floor. But if you like Impressionists, you should definitely go up there because that's also 19th century, and that's where those paintings are. Just the first floor can take you a couple of hours at least, depending on how long you spend. Yeah, enjoy it. Take it slow. Don't rush. Focus on the things you really love. Yeah, walk around and figure out what you really love and what you really care about. The Louvre is an adventure. The Louvre is massive. You could spend a week at the Louvre. So you have to be strategic about the Louvre. You have to really think about, what do I want to see? And then make sure you see what you want to see and spend enough time to satisfy yourself seeing what you want to see before you get what is known as museum fatigue. And you will get museum fatigue at the Louvre. Museum fatigue is, at some point, it's sensory overload. At some point, you just feel exhausted. Not because you've exerted yourself physically, but because you've exposed yourself emotionally, intellectually, but emotionally to all this art, and it's just overwhelming. And it's very easy to get museum fatigue at a place like the Louvre because there's so much there. So figure out, what do I want to see? And then go see that. Start your day with that when you're fresh, when you're alert, when you can fully enjoy it, and then go see the rest. And I've given advice on how to approach a museum, like focus on the things you love. Walk into a room, you don't have to look at every painting in the room. That's exhausting, and you're not going to retain it all. Scan the room, see what attracts your eye. What attracts you? What pulls you to it? And go and spend some time with that painting and try to figure out that. What appealed to me? Why was I drawn here? What is it? And then maybe do a second quick look around the room, make sure you don't miss anything, then go to the next room. But don't spend the same amount of time in front of every painting, read everything, because it'll exhaust you. It'll wipe you out. Now, in the Louvre, what do you want to see? What do I think you should see? There are a few super highlights in the Louvre. There are Michelangelo's sculptures, The Dying Slaves. I think there are two. It's in a room filled with sculpture, but you definitely want to spend some time there. I'm not gonna. This is not. I'm not saying this because he's an authority, but because you might respect his evaluation. These are, one of them is Leonard Peikoff's favorite sculpture. So spend some time with Michelangelo's Dying Slaves. There are other really good sculptures there. There's one by Canova. There might be a few by Canova in that room, which are also quite beautiful in a very different way. I mean, Michelangelo is really deep and emotional. The others are. And then I would definitely go to the staircase where Winged Victory is. Winged Victory, seeing her in life size at the top of the staircase, just a magnificent experience. So definitely go see Winged Victory. I love, there's an outdoor, well, it's not outdoor, it's covered, but it's kind of outdoors. Sculpture garden at the Louvre where they have the sculpture of Spartacus, which I really like. So you might want to go there. But you see, I'm biased towards sculpture, those wall sculptures. Definitely go to the Renaissance collection that the Louvre has. Now, the Mona Lisa is there. God, if you're probably going to go where there's going to be 1 million people and you won't be able to see the painting, not properly. So skip it. It's worth seeing. Mona Lisa is amazing, but it's not worth, elbow to elbow trying to, sneak your way to the front of the line in order to see it. But there are lots of other really good Renaissance paintings there, if you like the Renaissance. There are a lot of good Dutch paintings. I think there's some Vermeers. Certainly some Rembrandts. I think there's 1 or 2 Vermeers. Rembrandt. God, what else? I just escaped. Oh, some French. Jacques-Louis David is worth. I mean, just a lot of masterpieces. God, where do you stop? There's so many good ones. But that's where you want to go into a room and just focus on a few that you really, really like and are interested in. Skip like the Middle Ages. You can probably you can sample the Renaissance. Go to the famous ones. Go to the Raphael. I'm sure they have a Raphael. Maybe if they have any other Leonardos except Mona Lisa. Go to the big names, Renaissance painters, and then check out the other stuff that they have. It's not my favorite period in painting. They have quite a bit 18th century French. But there's some very charming paintings by Fragonard there and some others. Gruze, Gruze. What's her name? Lebrun, who's one of the few female painters. from the era that is really good. So just sample. Find this. It's a good place to discover what you like. All right, that's my tips for those museums. Remo also says, what are your favorite art pieces at the Louvre? I just gave it to you. Basically, that was the list of my favorite art pieces, right? I haven't been to the Louvre in a long time because last time I was in Paris and I wanted to go, I didn't buy tickets in advance and I got stuck outside and the line was too long. And if there's one thing I hate in life is standing in line, I do not like standing in line. So I skipped it. And does Dim say back Mamdani because the left can't win long term? God, you guys, you just... the Dim hypothesis is not about any specific election, any specific group of people, any specific candidates. It's about a cultural trend, about a movement in a particular direction. It also doesn't say when it's going to happen. Next week, this November, last November, 2 Novembers from now. If you start judging books that are trying to deal with the scope of history and trying to make long-term predictions about the world in terms of cultural and epistemological movements, and you're trying to judge any particular election based on it, that's ridiculous. I mean, the question you should ask yourself is Mamdani the beginning of a big shift in America towards socialism? Is the culture of woke left, of disintegrated leftism, the culture that is on the rise and is about to dominate America? Is that what you take from the Mamdani victory in the Democratic primaries? That American culture, and the culture of the West more broadly, is now moving in a direction of the victory of far leftism. And if that's a conclusion, and that that's sustainable, and that that's what's going to dominate America into the future, then yeah, Dim is wrong. But in the process of what Leonard Peikoff describes in Dim is the Dim Hypothesis, a book by Leonard Peikoff, copy of it back there. This book. If Leonard is right, then on a cultural scale, not in any particular city, not in a particular time, but on a cultural scale over the long run, people tend to reject disintegration. They tend to reject, as a consequence, the far left, the woke, pro-Hamas, haters of Western civ and haters of capitalism, haters of reason. If, reason, from that perspective, from a disintegrated perspective, then if he's right, then as a trend, that will fail. And what will succeed is a misintegration, as he calls it. Somebody who does integrate, even maybe in the name sometimes of reason, like the scholastics, misintegration around something. He says it'll be around religion and patriotism, religion and nationalism, is his argument, as the cultural trend into the distant future. And you can disagree with him, and we can check by it. It was published in 2013, I think, and he predicted 50 years. So in 40 years, we can chat and figure out whether his prediction came true or not. But to pick on a particular election, whereas you can look at the trends of generally Americans reject woke almost always when it's put in practice. Look at what happened in elections in San Francisco and LA and in a lot of even leftist places, but certainly look at how woke is being treated by the culture today. We're seeing an increase in respect for religion and an increase in respect for nationalism. I mean, a lot of what Leonard Peikoff is showing was published in 2003. No, 2013. It wasn't published in 2003. A lot of what Leonard Peikoff wrote in the book seems to be happening on a faster scale than he predicted. So take one little election out of context as opposed to the trend is ridiculous. Richard, if a pregnant woman visiting the United States has a premature delivery there, she should have the right to opt for her baby being American if she doesn't want that. Thoughts? Well, it's up to her. I mean, it's the parent's decision. If she doesn't want the baby to be American, they can tear up their passport and leave. So they don't have to get an American birth certificate if they don't want it one. You can't force somebody to become a citizen. So no, you don't automatically become. It's only, if somebody wants it. Anonymous user. It seems that Argentine economy is doing great. Why do you think their stock market has fallen so much this year? Elections, IMF, or bear feel? I don't know. I don't watch it closely enough. It could be that it went up too much last year. It could be that people are worried about this coming election. It could be that they're worried about Milei's ability to stop the opposition from passing some of these bills, which would put Argentina back in fiscal deficit. I don't know. I don't follow finance, economics closely enough. I did notice that my Argentinian ETF is down quite a bit in the last month or so, but I don't know the reasons. So I'm a long-term buyer, so I'll wait and see, because if he succeeds, the market will go up ultimately. But how it fluctuates in any given month or any given period depends on a lot of factors, including how well it did last year. Nate, can you speak a little on how to choose a place to live? Cities have all the jobs, food, sports, etc., but are leftist strongholds. Red states are low tax and freer, but don't offer much outside that. Yeah, I mean, you have to decide what are your values. What is important to you? I can't make a decision for you, right? I don't think red, blue should factor much into the consideration. The rate of taxation should, because how much money you have at the end of the day, how much disposable income you have matters. I don't know that it's the most important thing, but it matters. And the tax rates between blue and red states are not that different, particularly not if you can deduct your state taxes from your federal taxes. So, and unless you're making millions of dollars, they're not that high. But there are other considerations. What kind of business are you in? Are you starting a business? How easy it is in a particular state to start a business? What employment law is like? So there are a lot of factors that depend on what kind of business you're in, what kind of profession you have. Look, I like civilization. Cities are civilization. I like the idea of living in a city or close to a city. Cities have culture. They have concerts. They have opera. They have museums. They have interesting events. They have great restaurants. They have stuff to do. And so, I don't think I could think of living in a place that wasn't at least close, within an hour's distance from a city. I don't think I've lived in Austin is a good city. I lived close to an hour from San Francisco. I've lived an hour from LA. I now live in a city, not with the greatest culture in the world, but there are other benefits to living here. What's the cost of living? What kind of house do you want? Do you want to have a house? Do you want to have an apartment? What kind of a house? How much square foot? How much space? Do you want a big backyard? Do you want a small backyard? Do you want a pool? Don't you want a pool? Do you care about weather? Do you like cold? Do you like hot? How important is weather to you? To me, it's very important. So I couldn't live at this point in my life in a cold place. I wouldn't want to live in a cold place or in a rainy place. It's just not interesting to me. Well, unless the rain is warm, like here. So there's just so many different considerations that you have to take into account. And taxes and regulation are one of the many considerations that affect your life. But what is the point of of not paying a lot of taxes, but living somewhere where you can't enjoy anything. You have no sports, you have no food, you have no jobs are so, you can't get employment. What's the point? And then you got to think about, by the way, you think about why are cities more interesting? Why is the left more interesting than the right? Why is the left more cultured than the right? Because the right in America, in modern America, is anti-intellectual. It's anti the values of intellectual. The left, at least, elements of the left, at least value the intellect and therefore promote cultural institutions, even when they don't understand their value. But they at least want to put the pretense of intellectual. The right, wants to raise the banner of, I hate the intellectual. I hate intellectual pursuits. I hate culture, because culture is associated with the left. I hate everything associated with the left. I would not live in Utah. I don't think I could live in Utah. Salt Lake City is not an interesting enough city. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't strike me as an interesting enough city. And Mormonism is too present. Religion is too present. Look, one of the reasons I couldn't live in Israel, religion is too present, even though Israelis are not religious. They're very secular, in some ways more secular than American. Religion is too present. So, no, I couldn't live in a place that kind of defined itself by its Mormonism. I mean, there are very few places I would consider living in the United States. I mean, there's just not that many places at this point in my life. And it has to do with weather. It has to do with people's attitude of the kind of the culture. It has to do with cultural institutions, availability of those. It has to do with scenery. I like to live in a pretty place. I want a place that's pretty. A lot of cities are not pretty. A lot of places are not pretty. So finding that combination of the right weather, the right scenery, the right regulations, and relatively low taxes or whatever, all that is very, very difficult. In that sense, Austin is unique, but Austin also means you live in Texas. And Texas, think about how Texas treats women right now. Think about how, fascist the Texas government is towards women who seek abortions. And yeah, that in and of itself could be a reason not to go to Texas, particularly if you're a single woman or even a married woman who might get pregnant and who might decide to abort for all kinds of reasons, including health and the state of the fetus and all of that. Do you want to be stuck in Texas in those conditions? I mean, I would go to Texas because I'm not in that position. I'm never going to be. But I wouldn't go. Washington State, too much rain for me. I'd love Washington State in the summer, but the rest of the year is way too much rain. So, yeah, each one of you are going to have to decide. I mean, even if you think about state taxes, right? So Texas has no income tax, state income tax, but pretty high property taxes, pretty high sales tax. So California has lower property taxes, pretty low property taxes, particularly if you've owned property there for a while. Yeah, and income tax, but lower property taxes. So you got to take into account so many different things. Even if it's just taxes and regulation, there's a lot to think about. All these states are different. Washington State is a blue state, but no income tax. Seattle's a great city. If you can tolerate the rain, Seattle's an amazing city. Ryan, we argue that government is too big to be efficient or that the services are not as good compared to private enterprise. The Maw argument for small government is complex. Have you seen it argued other than Rand? I mean, there used to be some conservatives, some people on the right, call it the right, who used to make arguments about rights, individual rights, and that rights demanded limited government, and that That's why we need to shrink government, because it needs to be limited to protection of rights, or mostly to protection of rights. So some, but limited, not many. And libertarians mostly make the economic arguments. Almost nobody makes the moral arguments anymore. Ryan, does anyone acknowledge that socialism has been proven wrong, but laissez-faire has been tried? But laissez-faire has never been tried. The world is evading. If Milei fails, nobody acknowledges that. Yeah, that would require too much focus and engagement and thinking and all of that good stuff. Anonymous user, are you concerned about Milei's stance on abortion, his ambition to take Falkland, Malvins Island, and his religiosity? I'm concerned about his stance on abortion, certainly. I'm concerned about his religiosity in terms of how it manifests itself. But so far, it doesn't seem like any of those are major issues for him. And they seem to be primarily issues that kind of, he probably believes himself, but he doesn't seem to be willing to really invest in changing those issues politically. Falklands, I don't even know if he really believes in that, or if that is a way for him to basically bring the conservatives in with him, the nationalists and the conservatives, whose support he needs in order to do anything in the parliament, in order to gain any kind of traction. He needs the conservative support, and I think he does it for them. I don't really believe he cares about those things. So I worry about any bad ideas he have. So far, he has not put them into practice. So far, he has de-emphasized them as compared to all the good stuff he's doing. Oh, Robert, it's late. We should, let's see, we got a few more questions. Not many, a few more questions if you want to support the show. Now is a good time to do it. Remember, it's a listener-supported show. Couldn't do it without you. Do you believe that, let's say, build a house and you own the land, when you die, should it go to your children or whoever you choose in your will? Oh, whoever you choose in your will. I mean, if you choose your children, great, or default could be children. If you don't leave a will, but wherever the will says, it's your land, it's your building, your children have no claim against anything you produce. Once they're adults, they have no claim against you. You voluntarily could give it to them, but they have no claim against it. If yes, then when is a meaningful distinction between that and a society handing down what it's built to its own children? If yes, what is yes? Should it go to your children or whoever you choose in the will? If yes, I don't know what yes isn't an answer to that question. It's not a yes-no question. What is the meaningful distinction between that and a society handing down its built to its children? Society doesn't hand down anything. Society doesn't create anything. Society doesn't build anything. Society doesn't produce anything. Society doesn't own anything. Society doesn't hand down anything to anybody. Individuals produce, individuals make, individuals own, and individuals hand down what they make to whoever they want to hand it down to. Society doesn't exist in this context. The whole way of thinking in terms of society does that, society does this, is not my way of thinking. It's a wrong way of thinking. Society has no claim over my property, over my life, over my earnings, over what I do with my money, my wealth, my property. It's mine. That's the whole idea of property rights, whole idea of individualism, which is what American system of government is supposed to be based on. So I have no interest in what society, society, is or isn't. Who cares about handing down anything society-wide? It's what individuals choose to do. That's a healthy society. Healthy society is a society that leaves individuals free, which means also the freedom to choose who to leave your property to. Roland says, helping to reduce the trade deficit with Switzerland. Thank you. Oh, God, you've just created so much economic activity. Thank you, Roland. Jason, look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. I'll catch the rest on replay. I'm off to a matinee. Oh, he's going to see Superman. People say it's good. You'll have to come back and tell us if it's any good, Jason. I'm skeptical. I don't like superhero movies. Hey, Yaron, someone on another stream asked about ghost jobs, fake job postings. Is this fraud if they hold interviews with no intention of hiring? Why do they do this? Why would they do this? Why would anybody expend money on interviewing people if you don't intend to hire anybody? I don't understand the motivation. I don't think it's... it's kind of a fraud. I don't think it's a fraud you could sue over, but it's not an illegal. It wouldn't be illegal to do it, but what a waste of resources, what a waste of time, what a waste of money. Why would you do it? It just seems bizarre to me. The whole idea of ghost jobs. I don't believe that. I think it's people trying to make the job market look worse than what it actually is. Look worse than what it actually is. By pretending that that's real. Sometimes to get free advice, you do job interviews to get free advice. All right. I mean, I think it's dishonest, but I don't think it's fraud that you can sue over. All right. So, yeah, I think it's dishonest, but again, I don't think it's illegal. And I don't think it happens that much, although Capitalist Spy says it does. So, Landon says it happens because of automated systems. I'm in AI. It's real. All right. So I guess it does happen. It can be a big part of the employment landscape. I mean, again, it's expensive. Waco, what should be the final status of the West Bank and its Arab inhabitants? I don't know. I mean, the final status depends on what happens to people there and what their ideas are and what they believe in and whether they can change and whether they do change. I mean, so it depends on all of that. But if they can change dramatically, then I don't really care. They can have their own state. They can be part of Israel. They can be an autonomous thing. They can be part of Jordan. You know, there are many, many solutions to problems once the Palestinians change their view of the world. And if they don't change their views about the world, there's no solution other than, you know, Israel militarily guaranteeing its own security by having a presence there. I like numbers. How should I divide dollars between podcasters I value? Well, I mean, you should weight them based on how much you value them. So if you have $100, weight them based on how much you value them. Not on how much they need, but on how much you value them, I think. Right? So, like, I know you value the Yaron Brook Show more than any other podcast. So you should give the Yaron Brook Show more money than anybody else. No? Esoteric dichotomy. I went to the Louvre at 15. I was too young to appreciate it. Also, my taste in art is consumed by Japanese anime. It was a cool experience, though. You say is consumed by Japanese anime. So let me just say, broaden your horizon. You're not 15 anymore. It's time to broaden your horizon. It's time to go out there and experience other forms of art, have other kind of emotional, artistic, aesthetic experiences. It's a mistake in any realm to just devote yourself to one form of aesthetics. The world is too rich to do that. Your spiritual life is too rich to do that. There's a lot that you can do aesthetically and beyond anime. So while I'm not saying anything negative about anime, there's just a lot. There's just a lot more. So broaden your horizon. Broaden your horizon. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really appreciate it. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a little later in the day, 4:30 p.m. East Coast time tomorrow. I'm teaching from 2 to 4. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody.